what do you feel best about a day later after the Texans got a 29-27 victory in Indy versus the Colts, 713-572-4610? Because, Lopez, you feel very strongly that there is one correct answer about this.
Yeah, there is a question. The way I put it on the doc with you guys this morning is, what do you feel best about a day later, and why is it the interior offensive line?
Yeah.
It is. I didn't go full. I didn't go full Reggie, full Seth Payne, and scour the all 22. But I did rewatch the game yesterday.
Okay.
And I was old school guy that texts in occasionally, Figgy, that says it's all about the line. You got to watch the line.
It starts in the trenches.
It starts in the trenches.
It starts up front.
Hand in the dirt. The game, in its essence, is about blocking and tackling, baby.
I was that guy. I rewatched, and I was going through it pretty quickly, just play by play. Watch the offensive line, because we all know what Joe Mixon did. We all know how good Joe Mixon looked. Man, they did a good job.
So well.
Man, they did a good job.
It's about the offensive line.
Dude, I'm telling you, I was that guy, and I'm proud to say it, because I think it did a few things for me. Juice Scruggs, who I've been kind of high on since training camp, looked outstanding. I mentioned Kenyon Green yesterday. D'Amico Ryans was over the top with Kenyon Green. So I was kind of watching it. These guys were mauling. Like, they were flat mauling. And it just got me thinking, like, you don't have to have a running back go for, what did it go, 159?
That is correct. That number is going to be etched in my brain.
Yeah, you don't have to have a guy
on 30 carries, correct.
Go for 159 all the time. But as I mentioned yesterday, if you have an offensive line that, let's say he's run for 78 yards on 16 carries, and you go into the fourth quarter, and he can run for 30 and move the chains, or 40 and move the chains in the fourth quarter, if you have a line that can, sort of instill their will, like I said yesterday.
Just imposing.
Yes, grown-ass man football, then that's something that can carry this team to places that it's frankly never been before.
Absolutely. Like, I'm 100% there, and it really is for the reasons that you've laid out, and that we've talked about all up and down here on 610, is the idea of, hey, man, when they know what you have to do and you know what you have to do and you were able to go and just beat them, right? Like, that's competition, man. That's the essence of competition, and that's where you prove that you are the best, right? There's ways in which you can deceive and scheme, and in some ways, like, you want to do that as much as possible to give yourself the best chance, but the real instances where in any sport where we're like, oh, this dude is like tough, this dude is a dog, as Laramie Tunsil and others would like to mention, right? Basketball, 1v1, right? Football, let's go on one-on-ones, wide receiver, cornerback, who got it, right? Penalty kicks in some ways, although that's kind of, but you end up in one-on-ones, right? Like in live playing soccer, like there's all of these instances where it's like you have one goal that you're trying to achieve. I know exactly what you're trying to achieve, and I'm trying to stop you. Those are the real essence of competition, and running the football in some of those moments where you're trying to close out the game are those. And in test number one, the Texans proved not just to pass, but also be incredibly capable of doing it. And in large part, that was because Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and maybe most importantly, Kenyon Green were on their grind. And
it
on
Sunday. It also shows you what's that term you use occasionally. Truth of cause, or what is it?
A proof of concept.
A proof of concept.
Proof of concept.
Proof of concept. To me, I might steal that occasionally. Because
please do. It's one of my favorites.
I like that because because the proof of concept here is, like, let's say if the Colts, when the Colts are really good and can beat you, it's going to be almost not one-off, but kind of like one-off plays. Like Anthony Richardson goes nuts. Anthony Richardson throws the ball deep 4 times and completes 3 of them for touchdown. The concept here is, how do you know the Texans can be great? Because that's not a one-off when you're just boom, 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 boom. That's not a freak occurrence that you're proving you're better. It's not a one play.
Over and over again.
It's not a one play thing.
Yeah.
And D'Amico Ryans, he was talking about this actually on the coach's show last night.
Got to listen to all the Texans radio podcasts.
Well, and shout out to our guys that put it out there. That's how I listened to it and cut it up. But listen to him just frankly giddy about it.
Yeah, the key, I think, it starts, like you said, with the interior guys. Start with Juice, right? And Juice, and he had a big matchup going against Grover at that 2-high position. He did a great job of flattening him. So once Joe was getting the ball, we had such great lateral movement that there were these creases on the backside that we were able to hit. And that starts with, the guards and the center being able to move, and they did a really good job. And when you run outside zone, it goes back to the backside blocks. and we had one that was very teach tape worthy block of LT and KG. They were able to get a backside block on Buckner. Joe cuts back in his huge lane, and like you talked about, I said the O-line, but I got to give credit to everyone. When you run the ball that well, our tight ends, the way they stepped up and blocked on the edge. I mean, Cade, Brevin, and Dalton did a really nice job getting a hat on a hat in the run game. And also our receivers. We talk about Nico and the big plays that he made down the field, the 3rd and 11. But in the run game, Nico is blocking. Right, Robert Woods steps in. He probably had about 12 snaps in the game. Clinic, teach tape, wide receiver blocking with physicality. Like, man, it's outstanding by all of our guys on the perimeter as well as our offensive line.
I do love, like, you can tell when a coach is giddy when they're like, I would put this on film and show it to other people to teach them.
Teach tape.
Especially when you talk about D'Amico. D'Amico was a teacher. It's one of the things that makes him great.
A clinic.
Right. He's like, this is how you do it. This is what I was hoping for. This is what I envisioned when I told y'all this is what I wanted. And absolutely those guys on the perimeter deserve credit because that's some of the things that we were talking about when we were like scheming up runs, making sure that you have hats on hats, and you definitely saw that. I just love some of the language that we use with the offensive line when you went just
hat on hat,
flattened them. He flattened them, right?
Yeah.
Like I imagine cartoon steamrollers just like mowing folks down, and that's kind of what it looked like. The stats look cartoonish, right? I was showing you the breakdown of like where Joe Mixon picked up a lot of his yards and the touchdown.
Yeah,
wide left, right? Like behind the likes of Laramie Tunsil and Kenyon Green, and they did a fantastic job. Absolutely, this is something that I am super excited about, if no other reason than obviously they were really good, but also like the delta from where the expectation was and where they performed last season to this week 1 performance. Not saying that this is the end all be all, but that change in start to finish is so great that it deserves the plaudits, and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
And that's why one day later, what I feel best about is the line, but specifically the interior line, because that's where the biggest questions were. And it's not, like I said, it's not a one-off. It's not they hit a big play. No, it's they crammed it down our throat in the fourth quarter. That's a big difference between a team that can be great and a great team. And I think there's a big difference there.
Shout out to Jeff on the YouTube that said, it's coming. Look at what happened last night with the Niners in their running game.
Exactly.
Right? It's definitely something that was picked up. And honestly, like those offenses are similar, right? That's the Bobby Slowick inspiration in some ways. And so, yeah, you can see. I think that's also another thing that's fun is like you see the ways in which the legacy of running backs, as the Niners seem to be carrying that on, right? Where you can look at the likes of Mostert and you look at McCaffrey, and now even you see, even Debo you can put in there, and then you also put in Jordan Mason. Like running the football is paramount to what they do, in addition to being able to throw the ball. And in that Shanahan type system, the Texans are doing that this year, so that's really fun.
And anything that you think is going to be like you feel best about a day later. To me, I think it's the interior line, because we know what we're getting in C.J. Stroud, and we'll talk about that later. We know what we're getting in Joe Mixon now. He's proving himself there. But to be able to say those guys in the middle against a really good defensive line, and especially a really good interior defensive line by the Colts, I could not feel better about anything other than that.
That's right. In the Loop Sports Radio 6.